What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. I am here with my boy, Ben Becker. He is a senior BIMS major from Fort Worth, Texas, and he is here to talk about his experience trying to become a doctor, but also his experience being a lover of Jesus in college and college ministry. And without further ado, I'm going to pray us in. Hey, God, thanks so much for today, this afternoon. Thanks so much for bringing Ben onto the show, for carving time out of his day and mine so that we can just talk about you, talk about both of our experiences in college, Lord, through ministry, and just like how you've been working nonstop to produce fruit in both of our lives, God, how you've blessed us with an incredible friendship and just something that we can remember always, God. Help this conversation to be edifying to those both inside and outside of this room, God, and we pray that your Spirit would just fill our mouths with the words to speak your glory. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Bro, how is it going?
Life is going, man. Like busy, but lots of crazy things happening senior year too. Last semester of college, I can't believe it already.
Yeah, dude, that's right, bro. Are you like ready for graduation?
Well, I'm ready to graduate from the college studying part, but I'm gonna miss the hanging out with my friends every night. I'm gonna miss that a lot. Right. So a little bit here, a little bit there, but
right.
Yeah.
Do you have the grad stuff lined up already, or?
I've actually sent in my application for graduation already, so okay. I'm assuming I've done everything right.
Right. All the paperwork and stuff.
All paperwork. I haven't ordered my cap and gown yet. I don't think I have to do that for a couple months, but all the paperwork is sent in, and I'll hear back in a couple weeks about that.
Yeah. Are you looking to? Did you already sign for like grad school somewhere else, or?
Well, I actually have some good news about my future after college. Yeah. So a couple days ago, I received a match offer from the Texas Tech Medical School.
Bro.
So I've been officially accepted to a medical program.
Nice.
And so I know what lies ahead of me is medical school.
All the work, bro. It pays off.
It was hard to believe that all this work is finally paying off. Like at the time, like let's say 2 years ago, when I was a sophomore just studying for my classes, I was just wondering if this was ever going to work out in the end. But now that I'm actually here and seeing the results, it's all so surreal. It's such a great feeling.
Yeah, that's a really good place to start because you are notoriously thorough in your studying, to like say the least. Like there's legends of you pulling like what, 3, 4, 5-nighters like nonstop.
The longest I think I've actually ever stayed up in one sitting is 43 hours.
Gosh.
And that was studying, not just like watching a movie or hanging out with friends. Like I was studying those 43 hours. So
that's impressive. And also insane. Oh my God.
I was pushing myself to the limits. That's one thing college has taught me how to do, is to pull all-nighters.
No, what was that for? Was that just finals, or was that?
Finals, writing papers,
gosh.
Just busy, like doing homework assignments, honestly. Like, I may have procrastinated a little bit here and there, but I had no other choice. I had to do it or it wasn't going to get done.
I know. I don't know whether it's like a pride thing for me or if it's like I haven't had like a full college experience, but like the only all-nighters I've like really pulled have been like Friday, Saturday nights, where it's like I'm going out with friends and like we don't get back in till like 4 or 5 in the morning. All good fun, but it's like my bedtime during the week is like 10.
Yep. I know exactly what you're talking about. I love hanging out with my friends late at night, playing Catan, for example, watching games, things like that. But those all-nighters that I've been pulling were more out of desperation, like of freaking out about the test the next day. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do, so I got to make sure I go over this material over and over again. And that kind of drove me to stay up late to study.
Do you have test anxiety, or?
No. Not too much, no. More of, not in the test itself, but more of, I hope I know like all the material in order to perform well.
So just like a desire and a drive for like excellence, bro. You don't want to miss anything.
Correct.
That's
correct.
Freaking
or at least miss not too much.
Right.
Because as a pre-med, we're also crazy or neurotic, as you could say, about getting the highest grades possible and not wanting to miss anything. So I kind of had that mindset or mentality kind of slip into my head a little bit.
Was it tempting for you to kind of go into like the competition mindset where not only is it like, okay, I have to get like an A on a test, but like I legit have to do better than like everybody else on this test? Yeah.
Exactly. And I'd hate to admit it that the competition mindset has been with me, not just even for studying, but for sports or even playing games with my friends, things like that. But in terms of like future for med schools and all this studying, it's kind of hard not to have it because you literally have to do like above average in order to impress these medical schools.
Right. That's really interesting to me because I know for Maybe it might not be PSAT, but just like standardized testing in general. Like there's percentiles and stuff like that, but at least for like, I mean, the STAR test, it's like, okay, you get a certain number correct. It's like a really set, like fixed, you know, rate of correctness. That's a weird way to put it. And then then you pass and you go through. But really, like with the MCAT, I guess is what you're saying, or like just placement throughout your like, you know, graduate school and stuff like that. It's like you're literally in like a competition with all these other applicants.
Exactly. And the MCAT and the grades are probably the two biggest factors that medical schools look at. Like, yes, they look at, you know, your service to like underserved communities or your involvement in extracurricular activities, but they want to see that intelligence factor as well, which of course is important for any physician. But to get to that next step, to even have a chance to be a physician, you have to meet those, I guess, check marks that they're looking for.
It's definitely like a meritocracy in that way. Did you like did you have to like interview at all, or is it just like legit sending in apps?
Sure. So interviewing is actually a big part of the decision-making process as well. But in order to get to an interview, you have to meet the grade standards and the test score standards kind of thing. But what's neat about the interview is that maybe if you're not so great in those areas, like let's say, you know, your grades are a little bit low, but you have all these amazing experiences volunteering in the community through your church, then that would be like your opportunity to express like your mindset and like what your heart has like for those, you know, different events, and just being able to communicate that to somebody in person can actually make a bigger impact.
Yeah, because I know one of my friends last year, she's a sweetheart. She was applying for like nursing school, and she was kind of like expressing the same sentiments that you are in terms of like the HESI and the competition. It's like not only do you have to do well, but you've got to, you know, kind of beat out everybody else. And then she had her application that like she had me read over, because like English major for the grammar and stuff, and a bunch of it was like, why do you want to be a nurse? Why do you want to go into this program? Like, what can you offer this? And she was like struggling with it. She's like, like in my head, I know I want to be a nurse, but I'm not quite sure why. And that why for a lot of people is like really a tough sell, besides because you don't want to be the guy who says, I want to have a secure job and open my own practice and make a bunch of money. You know, it's like you want to, you know, genuinely help the community and stuff like that. But I know for you personally, having met you a lot and talked with you a bit, and then like also just like seeing your witness like in Impact and Breakaway, like just sharing the gospel with everyone, it would be awesome if you could tell us like your why behind like being a BIMS major, behind doing the MCAT, these notorious study hours, and just like seeking to be in the medical field, bro.
I love talking about this too, and it's funny that the question why you want to be a doctor was one of the big essay questions. Like not exactly that wording, but it was the gist of that that idea that med schools wanted us to write about. So, and I really enjoy talking about this story too, of where I come from. So I like to think about why I become a doctor in a few ways, from my experiences, from my, you know, my heart mentality of wanting to serve others, and my passion for the field of science. So I guess just a long time ago, if I want to start from the very beginning, when I was a little kid, I've lived in the same cul-de-sac or in the same neighborhood my whole life, and I've been best friends with this kid that's a similar age as me for a very long time. And I would go down to his house all the time. You know, his parents and my parents were pretty close. I was really close with his dad as well, because we saw each other a lot. And, you know, as I was growing up, I just thought of my best friend's dad as, you know, the dad down the street kind of thing. So knowing that for years and years, we came pretty close to each other kind of thing. So then let's fast forward to high school. And while I'm in high school, this is where my passion for science starts to grow a little bit. I had the blessed opportunity to have a really great AP chemistry teacher and an AP biology teacher, who both of which like were such great mentors, such great teachers, that whatever they taught me somehow like sparked something inside me to want to pursue something like that in college. And that inspired me to seek out science majors and different things like that. But I was also leaning towards the idea of maybe going into healthcare, like whether it was a physician or a nurse even, or a PA, different things like that, just because this passion, especially in AP biology, when we were learning about all the organs and organ systems, it was pretty interesting, and it really sparked something inside me. So knowing that, I talked to my parents a little bit about it, and that's when I find out that my neighbors my best friend's dad, so my neighbor just 2 doors down the street.
Okay.
I find out that he's actually an orthopedic surgeon.
Okay.
And so when my dad told him about my interest in healthcare, I'll refer to him as the orthopedic surgeon now.
Okay.
The orthopedic surgeon gave me the opportunity to actually come to his clinic and shadow him in person.
Bro.
In the clinic and in the operating room.
This is in high school?
This is in high school.
Bro, that's impressive. The connection, man. That's
the
awesome.
Connection really early on. Again, not many high school students even had the chance to get into a hospital. You know, regulations are really tight kind of thing.
We had like a clinical rotation class, I think, in my high school, like with the career, you know, cluster and stuff like that. But even then it was like, I think a retirement home down the street, and they just kind of like watched and stuff like that.
For sure. And you know, it's even hard to find connections in general or people willing to let you do that. And having someone literally 2 doors down from me who I've known all my life, you know, having this want and desire to come watch me in practice was an opportunity that I definitely could not turn down and did not want to turn down.
Yeah.
So a couple days later, we set something up. I went into his clinic, learned everything about his job, you know, what his everyday life is. You know, we made a few rounds with some patients as well, and I got to listen in on his thinking process and the way he, I don't know, just made diagnoses and things like that.
Bro.
But then the next day, that's when I got to go into the operating room. In the operating room, I got to see 4 surgeries, my first ever shadowing experience in the hospital.
How long did that take, 4 surgeries?
They weren't back to back, but I spent probably about 12 hours at the hospital that day.
Dang.
Getting there about 6:30.
And you didn't get squeamish at all?
Not squeamish at all. Well, let me get to that.
Yeah.
So I remember the first procedure that was done was a knee replacement, a total knee replacement, which is when the joint is basically worn down, going to replace some bone with some metal pieces, and it's ultimately a better result, less painful, things like that. But the entire time, I was just riveted on the procedure because it was something I've never seen before, nothing I've ever experienced.
Peering inside the human body, like live action, bro.
Exactly, and I was literally 10 feet away from it. Like, I was up front. Like, obviously, I wasn't right at the table because that's where all the surgeons were. But I was at an angle pretty close where I could see what was going on, and I was right there. And it was just so mind-blowing that I was, like, so transfixed and so absorbed in what was going on. And that's when it hit me that, man, doing something like this sounds pretty cool for, you know, maybe the rest of my life. I don't know.
Yeah.
So that inspired me to pursue medical school, in particular, to have the chance to be in the position that orthopedic surgeon was in, practicing like surgery or medicine of any kind.
I got you.
So another thing I'd like to highlight on before I go into college.
Yeah.
So besides like academics and shadowing, all my life I'd been growing up in the church and devoting a lot of my life to service, like through the church or even in the Boy Scouts. I'm an Eagle Scout.
Let's go, baby. Eagle Scouts of America.
Eagle Scouts, that's right.
And what was your project?
My project was painting a giant wall mural on the side of our community outreach.
Bro, what was the mural? Was it just like
it was
love?
It was ultimately a symbolizing bringing people together in the building. And like on the left side of the door, it was like these cartoon figures kind of scattered everywhere. But on the right side of the door, like quote unquote coming out of the door, they're all holding hands together. Aww. So that's ultimately like what the goal of that.
Kumbaya, everybody.
basically. And that's what I did for my Eagle project. But anyway, like growing up in the church and doing all this service for the community really grew my heart towards, you know, selfless service and giving back to those who need it more than I do, especially. It's been a humbling experience through all my service opportunities to see, you know, what's out there. And it always brings me joy, you know, whether the recipient, you know, likes it or not, but it makes me feel better devoting my time and my talents in various different shapes and form in order to bring like a positive like,
did you
impact.
feel like, because clearly like you devote a ridiculous amount of time to all of this, when did you start to see a talent in high school? Was it like an interest, or like just like was there something about science and like biology and chemistry you were talking about earlier? You had like those 2 really great teachers. Was there something about them that like not only piqued your interest? Was there something almost natural about your gifts that like you excelled in those areas as well?
I think what it was for me, I can't pinpoint an exact time, but I remember growing up when I do like little deeds, kind deeds every day, like whether it's just opening the door for my mom, like when I'm a little kid, I can't do too
exactly. So whatever you can do, it's just like, I'm a superhero, Mom.
Exactly.
Let's go.
And the joy that like my family expressed whenever I would do something good was really, you know, it was really nice. And I think that may have been like when I was young, just doing these little things, starting to add up, seeing my family react was
positive reinforcement, bro.
Exactly.
Chivalry's not dead.
Exactly. And so I guess you could say growing up then I started to do it more, not just within my family, but maybe extended family or my friends. And then once it got out of that realm, then to people I didn't even know.
Right.
And that just
and you see that same response? That just like nice.
I will say probably about 95% of the time. Like, yes, there might be a few instances here and there where, you know, the result doesn't go as intended.
Yeah.
But overall, it's been a very meaningful experience giving my time, like, no matter what, to try and improve somebody else's life in a way.
Yeah, and that Scouts thing that you were talking about, I think I knew that before, but I wasn't quite sure. Like, the fact that Scouting, even as it's changed throughout like the past 100 years, is like such a service-oriented organization, and really like not explicitly Christian-based, but really faith-based. And they do a really good job. I mean, a Scout is reverence, the last point of the Scout law.
Sure.
And so it's like, did you feel kind of like that experience with you in Scouting also kind of reinforced? Was there anybody in Scouting that kind of told you, or just like encouraged you to be a better version of yourself, like a better follower of Christ, a better servant to the community and stuff like that?
I will admit, when I was early in my Scouting days, when I really wasn't sure what was going on, I thought about everything as a checkbox, like a check
on the back of the book, bro. You get that signature, you say goodbye.
But I think as I got older, the lessons in Scouting started to grow more deeper, just because we're older, more experiences, we can understand things a little bit better. And I don't know if I can pinpoint a person exactly off the top of my head within the Boy Scouts, but through my projects that I've done in Scouting, like the mentors that, or the recipients that I've met, or the leaders of certain like organizations that I've helped through Boy Scouting, when they explain, like, for example, their mission of their organization and how our help is benefiting like their organization, and it's usually a significant help with, 20 scouts. Like, not all of us are old, but even like 20 scouts.
I mean, 20 helping hands, bro. Like 14, 16-year-old kids, you forget how strong they are, and like they're getting used to their bodies and everything. But you put them to like shovels or to like backhoes and stuff like that, like they'll work. Get them the checkbox, granted, but like it's still really, really cool. And what's interesting to me, and I think this might have, it clicked for me definitely after the fact, but like the nature of the requirements in Scouting is like those first couple of ranks, tenderfoot, second class, first class, they are check boxes.
Exactly.
And even within those check boxes, you kind of have the hint of explain service or like participate in 1 or 2 hours of community service. But then Star Life Eagle, you have the main requirements being leadership. And I think for me, like what I've personally learned about leadership is like leadership is service in a nutshell. And it's not like, okay, lead a meeting. It's like lead 3 months, 6 months, a year and a half of meetings throughout the entire, tenure from like, Life to Eagle, or I guess like first class to Eagle more so. But like, is that something that kind of like hit home for you? Like, how did those like later ranks kind of shape you in a way that maybe like those first couple didn't?
Well, I think, like you're saying, like leadership is heavily emphasized and service is emphasized more than anything in those positions. So a greater sense of responsibility was also required. It was a big maturing moment to proceed through those rankings. And, instead of having that checkbox mentality like you did in the earlier rankings of Boy Scout, you have to have more of a desire to want to do, this leadership position and commitment, determination, responsibility, commitment, desire. And I think in each of the rankings, like Life or Star, Life, and Eagle, in order to, get the most out of, those experiences, you need to, abide by and exhibit those qualities. And I think those really matured in me during those times. And
more than that, it's like you start having to explain more and more a lot of the conversations that you have, because you have the conferences with the adult leaders, and they're kind of, softly evaluating, is this kid serious about this, or did his parent just make him go through the check boxes for like his own good? There was a point, I think for me, like between Star and Life especially, where I had to sit down with a good friend of mine. His name is Mr. Schrader, and like he started pressing me on questions, and like I had to think for the first time about my answers, and I think I might have just like kind of like BS'd something along those lines. But like after the fact, I kind of went home thinking about it, and there was like so much more contemplation about leadership, about service, about the points of the law that are like you repeat literally just like doctrinally, religiously, like over and over for like however long you're in there. But it's like I think those conversations more so than anything reinforce those values. Is that like the same kind of vibe with you? Did you ever have like conversations about what you were doing, or is it more just kind of like natural?
Definitely had conversations about what I was doing with my scout masters and even senior patrol leaders, people who are a little bit ahead of me, because they probably had the same talks that they had when they were scouting as well. And then with their years and years of experience in the Boy Scouts of America, you know, they were able to, you know, build on these experiences in order to make our experience even better.
Right.
And so I think all of them collectively, like throughout, you know, scouting, I think maybe the biggest time was, you know, transitioning from Life into Eagle, because that's probably
it's a big step, bro.
It's a very big step, and I think that was a great opportunity for them to share any light or wisdom that they had for me.
Being able to propose that project, get it approved, go through like legit bureaucracy and figure out what that's like. Can you endure the paper trail?
The more I think about it now as I'm talking to you right now, man, I can't believe I made it through that whole process.
No, it took me a ridiculously long time. Like Life to Eagle, because I think freshman year in high school, I was already Life. I could check like my book and go all the way back. But like sophomore year, fall of sophomore year is when I like did my Eagle project. You know, I had to propose and like did all that. It took me until the summer after junior year to finally have my like Life to Eagle conference, because there was just like this paper trail that I didn't want to go through. But then like my parents like finally like shit me up, and it was it's really beneficial, I think. And like just especially because you have so much like value, and the organization's changing, in my opinion, I think, like for a good thing. Did you hear about the integration thing with the girls and the guys and stuff?
I have heard about that.
Yeah, because like we've had girls in the Boy Scouts for like ever. Like you have Den Mothers, you got Scoutmasters and stuff like that, and then you had Venturing BSA, which was like 14 and up girls and guys, and now they just kind of like trickled it down to like everything, and like everyone's like, oh my gosh, there's girls in the Boy Scouts. I'm like, they've been here, like, and it's I mean, did you have like any particular opinion on that, or was it like
This could be a whole completely different conversation, but I think the way it was done was not handled well at all. I think people with a little bit more liberal beliefs made too big of a fuss about it, and just
you think it was kind of giving into like social pressure and stuff like that?
I think a lot of it was social pressure, honestly.
I think it might have sped it up, but I think that was something that might have been like on their mind for a long time, because like, I mean, again, it's like girls have been there for literally ever, and so it's like, I don't know. Either way, though, I don't know if it like you said earlier, it's like making a fuss to get it, you know, to happen, but like the people making a fuss now that it has happened, I'm like, like, okay, there's still supervision. It's not like, you know, they're sharing tents or anything like that. It's like, if anything, like they could be socialized a little bit better, and then, you know, whatever comes from that. But
for sure.
That's like, you're right. It could be like a totally different conversation. But back into your, high school and college, I'm sorry, I'm kind of off in there.
Basically, those were the biggest things in high school that I wanted to highlight, was my first shadowing experience, my passion for science, and, you know, growing up, you know, in a service and selfless household and community kind of mentality. And so knowing all of that, transitioning into college, and throughout these 4 years of college, really, there have been a lot of like similar experiences that have just furthered my passion, and I've had to do a lot, you know, to initiate most of like finding these opportunities to volunteer, or a lot of it's on me, but it doesn't feel like a burden at all to me, because it's just something I naturally want to do.
That's big, bro. And
it's great that down here at A&M, there's so many like easy, you know, ways to do whatever you want to do down here. So many volunteer opportunities you can find, or, you know, different things like that. And so I was pretty happy about that down here at A&M. But throughout, you know, college, in terms of academics, there was some one of the biggest things that have really stood out to me is that there have been times where I've just been on the brink of losing it, like mentally.
That's all of us,
including those all-nighters that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
But then there were some times where like I had to get A's on exams.
Right.
Because I knew what thought was looming in the back of my head was, like we said earlier, the competition, or, my future kind of depends on this grade, and it adds up in the very end kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting with the sorry to cut you off, but it's interesting with the competition as I'm thinking about it. It's like you get your score on a test and you get your grade, for the MCAT and everything like that, but you don't get to see anybody else's unless they share it with you, and I'm sure you've got buds and you kind of like compare notes and stuff like that. But like I think a lot of the competition, not that it isn't there, but it's so unseen and it's like this invisible warfare. So in that way, it's like it is so emotionally and mentally taxing. Is that something that like kind of resonates with you? Yeah,
especially, and it drives me nuts that people who do well obviously are going to talk about it, but then when there's people like me who struggle a lot here and there and not getting the grades I want, we all really don't talk about it. Or even the MCAT. Like my MCAT score was good and good enough to get into medical school, praise Jesus, but then there were a lot of people, me including myself, I was a little hesitant that didn't really want to talk about it because I kept hearing people talking about their top 15 percentile score kind of thing. And it kind of made me a little hesitant, a little jealous in a way, that I wish I did better. And, these people look at me maybe a little bit differently for not getting a good score or things like that. But in terms of like certain academics in school and certain tests, for example, one time I was actually studying for biochem exam.
Yikes.
Biochem is a whole... this is one I would
Let's throw them together, why don't we?
What I'd love to highlight. In biochem, I took biochem over the summer, so it was a little bit more accelerated.
Jeez.
I think it was 10 weeks or 12 weeks instead of 15 weeks, so we had to power through a little bit of material pretty quickly.
That's nuts.
And, it's coming down to the final exam. I've been borderline B, A the entire semester, working my tail off, trying to understand the material, do well on every assignment so I can have that chance at getting an A kind of thing. But it started coming to the point at the end of the semester where I was starting to get overwhelmed with, fall semester's about to start, or, I have an exam and then the next day I have to go home, and all these different things started popping up that, I really couldn't miss out on. But I knew that I still had to do well on the biochem exam if I wanted to get an A. And I think I had to get a 95 on the exam to get an A in the class.
Yikes.
It was just getting to the point that I was just feeling so overwhelmed, though, that I'd done everything I could, and I ultimately stopped trying to take it completely into my own hands.
Yeah.
And that's when I really gave up that test to the Lord and gave up that class to the Lord, because
that's so big.
I listened to a sermon. I don't remember what I searched in the search box on the website to find the sermon. I think it was faith, honestly, though, if you're interested.
Yeah.
But I searched faith. One sermon comes up, and I'm like, okay, I'll just listen to it, because I was skipping church Sunday to study, so I was going to listen to a sermon that day, get my devotion in, kind of like that. And so I listened to that sermon, and it was literally all about putting your entire faith in Jesus kind of thing. And after listening to it, I realized I was doing that whole summer wrong, that I was trying to learn the material by myself for the reason of getting an A. And if I can't do it, then it's not going to happen. Whereas, like the sermon said, that Jesus can do all of these amazing things for us, including, helping me out in this class at the end of the summer. So that completely changed my mindset for the last 2 weeks of the class. From, oh no, I have to do well, to it's okay. Jesus has already gone ahead of us and done things that we can't even possibly imagine. And that, knowing this, that I can put my full trust and faith in him, that everything will be okay. And so that's how I saw the rest of the semester. And I went in, took my test, and lo and behold, I did well enough to pull an A in the class.
That's good bull, bro. No, and it's so interesting how you were talking about specifically, feeling like you were going through that summer alone or through that class alone, really it's like, you know, God's Spirit is with you. It's just kind of like whether or not we like have that, you know, discernment in us, like in the moment to kind of like lean in him. One of my favorite verses that like we kind of twist around a lot is like Philippians 4:13. You know, like every athlete's got it either like tatted or on a shirt or whatever.
You're right.
But I really do love it because it's like I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But that's not necessarily about like our ability. It's really Paul talking about Christ's ability. And my pastor back home in San Antonio explained it this way, where it's like, I can't, but he can, and he can through me. So we're really just like the instruments that God's using to do the amazing things that you've been doing, either like studying for tests or just like acing tests or blowing them out of the water, you know, getting the A in the class that you need, and just like managing like not only like academics, but friendships and relationships, having these other like service organizations that you're involved with. It's like we forget that, like, and I still do this like legit every day. It's like we forget that we are not alone in this like fight, and we're not alone in anything that we do. And I think there's that bit of pride where we like see, it might be because like, and this is honestly what it's been for me lately, where we see all those other people either talking about their scores or talking about, you know, how well that they did. And for whatever reason, it's in the back of my mind that they did that by themselves, you know, and for whatever reason, it's like, okay, like so-and-so got like a 100 on their freaking biochem final, which I didn't know was possible. And then like, you know, I get like, I probably just like failed it because I don't know, like a biochem. But it's like, for whatever reason, I have this picture in my mind, like as if God wasn't leaning into them as well, you know, and like, and God blesses them, thank the Lord, not going to be like jealous of that, but also feeling like, now all of a sudden I have to do this by myself because I have this perception that they're doing it all well by themselves in a way, you know?
I agree completely. And I know maybe if, you know, whoever is listening to this, that if it sounds selfish to do that just to get an A in the class, like that's not the only time I've ever done that. And I will say I already knew that since my future had been, you know, already determined, and that I can rest assured knowing it's okay, that it'll work out best for me, whether that was a B or an A. So I already knew getting a B was going to be okay. And even this last semester, actually, borderline B, C in a class, like not even close to an A, and I was going to be happy with a B or a C, you know. Obviously, I wanted the B, but at the same time, I knew no matter what the result was, that it was going to be okay.
That's faith in a nutshell. It's always weird to me how like there's never a class that I have like an 85 in or like an 84. It's always like 88.7 or like 82.3. It's like, okay, this isn't safe anymore. I can't just like go into this final or like these last 3 or 4 weeks and be like, I'm chill with this. I'm pretty consistent. It's always like, this is life or death. You are like on the cusp of greatness or like failure. If B is like a failure for whatever reason. It's like, it's ridiculous how much like stress we end up putting on ourselves because there is this like line that like for whatever reason like we see as success, whether it's and it's always the next thing, because it's never like, I mean, everyone's different, so it's not an A for everyone. Sometimes it's a B for somebody, and it's like you're a BC student, you want that B. You're an AB student, you want that A. But like, you're never satisfied, you know, and that's been the thing for me. Even when like I'll have like a straight A semester, it's like, oh, did I blow this class out of the water? Did I get like a 97 overall, or did I get like a 90.2, which happens a lot. Praise for Jesus, because you break that line or whatever. But it's like, where did you find that contentment? Because you were speaking about it. It's like, okay, I'm getting this B or I'm getting the C. Either way, I'm getting this A or I'm getting this B. I'm good either way. Like, how much does Christ play a role in that piece that you have? Like, what's your like day-to-day devotion that kind of brings you into that space where like, God, legit, whatever you would have come out of this, I am good with it?
Well, I think, you know, every day I start, you know, with the Lord, in scripture, prayer, maybe sermons if I have time in the mornings, kind of thing.
Yeah. You podcast, bro?
Well, I should podcast more. A little bit of Pastor John Piper podcasts.
Nice.
Because they're nice and short.
Yeah.
For like a quick 10-minute thing.
For sure.
But in terms of like where I found that contentment, like how I've learned to manage that contentment is what you're asking, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think one particular experience that sticks out to me in general that the Lord has helped me out with this is the Lord has blessed me with a wonderful mentor, who happens to be the orthopedic surgeon two houses down.
Y'all keep in touch?
We keep in touch quite a bit, actually.
Yeah.
And I wanted to highlight this on a little bit, but one thing that I got out of my shadowing experiences with him is that not only is he a great and smart person, but the way that he treats his employees, his patients, his family's patients, or just anybody in general that he crosses in the hospital, he always greets them with a smile, or says hi. Or the students that he's teaching, he goes way out of his way to help people.
He's a professor as well?
Or he's not a professor, but he's more of like a resident doctor. Like he teaches the residents how to do their thing, basically. Yeah. And when I witnessed him doing all of these things other than operating on the table, it was really inspirational to me to be broad-minded and seeing somebody in the field of medicine having also this mentality of wanting to help everybody around him.
Right.
And even recognizing that it's made me feel more comfortable around him, because he's always honest and gives you thoughtful and genuine advice. And so because I've seen him do that with the residents and things like that. Okay. So that made me feel more comfortable to reach out to him with issues other than school. I've gone to his house in person and asked for some genuine life advice. I'm feeling stressed about this and that, or since he has a lot of experience, with dealing with medical schools and residents and things like that, he has a lot of knowledge to give me really good advice to see what he's seen, and maybe kind of tell me what's wrong with my views and things like that.
That's just the perfect example of literally mentorship and discipleship and all that cool stuff. And I was wondering it's honestly amazing because I find myself looking back at a lot of my teachers, especially knowing that I kind of want to be somewhere in the teaching profession, whether it's legit my title is teacher or professor, or whether I just teach as a part of my job, whether it's ministry and stuff like that. And it's I think literally any educator is seriously underrated. And again, it's not just title of educator, but anybody who's teaching or just experienced or that you can learn from, that is a mentor or a disciple. We got to be seeking those people out, especially, pardon me, especially just as a high school, college student, whether or not it's your mom and dad, I think nature just kind of splits us from them and from family from time to time. You just you kind of fly the nest a little bit, but finding somebody who can continuously pour into you, who isn't necessarily a peer, because peers are great and it's great to bounce off, like we're doing now. This is super helpful, but again, somebody who does have 5, 10, 15, 20 years of experience on you, who can look back on those 15, 20 years and be look, this is what you don't want to do. And this is what you do want to do.
Exactly.
And it'll probably take us, another 15, 20 years for us to learn that same thing, because we're just stubborn. But how, and is he, I would imagine, is he also a spiritual mentor for you? Very much? Yeah.
Very much indeed. I remember, man, I really wish I remember. I think he took a few verses out of Matthew 5 for me once when I was kind of struggling with a little anxiety or stress about, what's going to happen to me.
For itself type of thing. Yeah.
But one major piece of advice or wisdom that he poured into me that really stuck out to me in particular is, me at the time had these selfish desires of wanting to get these high grades in the test scores, or I want to go to this high profile name school, medical school,
the prestige,
that kind of thing. And I was really stressing myself out about it, and he could clearly tell that that I didn't have to be worrying about it. And the way he responded to me is that, he took about one resident from, at least, I think they had, let's say 6 residents, and they took one resident from different medical schools all across, the country.
Yeah.
And so that being said, not everybody came from the high profile name, but they came from everywhere. And in addition to that, one of the top doctors in my hometown was actually not from the high profile school as well. And so that kind of made me realize that, maybe my selfish desires are well, definitely that my selfish desires of wanting to do these things are not right, and that I need to rethink my whole view on what I want to do in the future, or where I want to go, as opposed to me trying to direct the place I want to go, or me trying to control where I want to go, but instead letting the Lord take me to where he wants me to go. And so I truly believe, once I change that mindset, I've gotten a lot more satisfaction out of this whole process than what it could be.
That's definitely like a big thing for me as well. And I think it goes like, because yours is kind of within your own vocation, and within being a doctor, you've got, I'm guessing hundreds of different medical schools, and you've got like the Ivy Leagues and like the really, advanced like technical institutes and stuff like that. But you also have like the, the kind of lesser names that like you wouldn't really hear about. But again, it's the people who go to these schools, who come from these schools, that make the name what they are, as opposed to just like the name of the institution. And I feel like we've kind of got all this pressure to like pursue the name rather than like the content, like there's tons of like brand loyalty and stuff like that. And we're really with like parents as well. Like, I mean, my parents were super supportive with me. I'm sure yours were with you, especially like being a doctor. But like my original idea, like passion coming into college was like, I want to be a coach. Like I want to be a tennis coach, and I want to like work at like a university, like want to have like a college team, and like those guys, I just wanted to like play tennis the rest of my life. And like, I would tell that to people, and it's like, oh, okay, that's cool, but it wasn't doctor, it wasn't lawyer, it wasn't engineer, like 75% of A&M's population, And then moving from that, because I would tell people, okay, I'm a kines major, and their first thought was like, oh, you want to go to PT school? Like, that's pretty cool. Like physical therapist, like a pseudo doctor in a way. And they do a great job, not to knock on PT, but like I was just like, just want to be a coach. And it was something about like just wanting to be a coach, as if like that profession, that vocation was somehow any less again than like these guys who care for like the physical needs of people, as opposed to like, the emotional needs and like the spiritual needs. Because like we're talking about this now, how like mentors, coaches, teachers and stuff like that have brought so much life into like both of us through whatever avenue, whether it's like your neighbor or a scoutmaster, or like your teachers in high school, your biology and your chemistry teacher, who like stirred your passion forward into what you love. But we just gotta like have a heart for everybody, and understand that like, I mean, what God puts on your heart, he has put on your heart for a purpose, and he would never put like a passion in your heart that was not worthy of being honored.
I agree, because
it's just noble, and thinking like, why would God put something in my heart if he was not going to honor that? And in the end, if we're thinking about like what the world's going to say about us with the name of the institution, whether it's like Ivy League again, or just like super advanced, as opposed to like, what does God think of this? Like, how are you as an individual pursuing your passion and experiencing like life and serving the community, doing all these extra things besides the grades? It's like, we just got to have that switch in mindset, bro.
Yeah, and I give at least like 100% of the credit to my mentor for revealing that to me. Like, he definitely didn't say it like you said it, just word for word to me, but in the way he shared his examples, not only from scripture, but with his with his residents and what he's seen in that field. It's really, he's the one that I can give credit that helped change my mindset and ultimately get more satisfaction out of this whole process, and ultimately be happy about where I'm at right now, instead of being dissatisfied at where I originally wanted to be, kind of thing.
For sure.
And I'm very happy and fortunate, and praise the Lord for bringing us together, because,
really,
thinking about it now, I don't know what could have happened if I didn't, reach out to him more often, or where I'd be if, maybe we didn't live in the same neighborhood, kind of thing.
Could be a completely different path, bro. But even if it was like a similar path, it's just like the quality of life along that journey, and how much stress has probably been avoided, either like in that moment speaking with him, or like just looking back on those conversations. I know like I think about things like my mentors have said legit on the daily basis, because it's just like they bring you peace, and maybe I don't always attribute like the name, but I'll remember something they've said, and it's just like, you are continually blessed by those who just like are willing to like not only put time into their vocation and their passion and the thing that like they live off of, but also into the community, into you, because like I guarantee, like as much as like he was your neighbor, and as much as like he and your parents probably had a good relationship, like there was no contractual obligation for him to take you under his wing and to do like everything he's been doing with you, but it's amazing just like the fruit that comes from that selfless service in a way, and him exhibiting that just purely through your relationship with him.
Exactly. It's been really comforting to know that there's somebody like him in the medical profession that has a heart for Jesus, especially because it seems like nowadays, people may associate science fields with different religious beliefs or views like that. But seeing him in practice doing the things that he did and the beliefs that he has is really inspirational, and it's a great sign that it exists out there and that it can be done. And so that I can't wait now that since I've been accepted to a program that's going to be me someday, and I can't wait to do that.
Definitely. And you hit on something that I definitely want to talk about with you, and that's just we forget doctors are scientists and stuff like that, and it's not just like like a lot of general surgeons, you kind of have like a general knowledge of everything, but anatomy, physiology, like chemistry, biology, it's like you're doing a lot of empirical work, maybe not a lot of research, so to speak, but like still have a lot of knowledge of the hard sciences and how everything kind of fits together. And there's kind of like this label that we put on like super smart people, especially like doctors and scientists, that they're like less religious, or they don't advocate religion as strongly, particularly Christianity, because it's like the main one we always like to think about. What has been your experience, not only with your mentor, because you've spoken about how he is like super spiritual, loves the Lord, loves Christ, but also within your major these past like 4 years working with other students? Have you seen kind of the traditional, I guess, like societal approach, like, okay, these people aren't pursuing the Lord, or have you seen something different where there is a culture of doctors who like are in love with the Lord and want to pursue him? So
I've seen within BIMS at Texas A&M, like since it's a science major, I've seen pretty much the entire spectrum of from, very religious people who love Jesus, putting him first kind of thing. In the middle, I guess, people who are Christians may not express it like, I guess I don't know how to say it exactly, but
nominally Christian, or don't practice as,
exactly. And then there's like people who don't have the Christian beliefs at all, like whether it's other religions or no religion at all kind of thing. So I've seen the entire spectrum kind of thing. And the biggest way that it seems like it's hurting like people who are believers within the science major is more so of trying to spend all our time mastering the material kind of thing, and putting that first above like Christ and time in the Word and things like that. I think that's the most significant thing that I've learned. I haven't really touched too much on, let's say, like the theory of evolution, different things like that, because we really don't focus on that in the classes I take. But I'm pretty sure that within those classes out there's a lot of firm believers, especially those that teach it, that kind of thing. But my biggest thing that I've seen is just the priorities are a little bit different with those who love Jesus with all their heart and realize that what we're doing with the Lord and our relationship to the Lord matters more than what we're doing in college right now. Whereas compared to those who don't see it as clearly as some other people do, and thus I guess gradually are going down the path of studying more than spending time in the Word kind of thing. Have you felt, and this might be like kind of circular, have you felt like more pressure overall, or would you say like less pressure on yourself being a Christ follower, like in college, and like specifically like your major that is a lot more scientific, to kind of uphold this representation of Christianity, like in the sciences in a way? Like does that, does your faith take pressure off you to perform, or does it kind of put more pressure on you to like kind of like act out and be the picture that everyone expects when they hear the word Christian? I think it takes a lot of pressure off of me. But in terms of coming into college, I really haven't felt much more pressure to exhibit it, but more of a desire to want to do it. That's great. Especially coming into college, like literally, but the first interaction that I had with at A&M was at Impact, which in case you don't know, it's the three-day retreat where we spend a lot of time just learning how to live a godly life in college kind of thing. But that was literally my first experience at Texas A&M, and I was very inspired to see these people living out a godly life in college, and it inspired me and gave that desire for me to want to continue pursuing that. And so I didn't really feel much of a pressure other than, you know, maybe here and there, like I wish I had more biblical knowledge, or I wish I was wish I could, you know, I had a better deep theological understanding of this concept.
Or like the ability, like the courage to witness, like in the classroom and stuff like that. And I wouldn't imagine, is there like a whole lot of opportunity in the classroom to like discuss that kind of thing, or is it just kind of like, eh?
Well, besides like showing up to class right when the course starts, kind of thing, I've gotten more out of being a witness when I have been outside of the classroom, because in the class we're all focused, you know, let's all get buckled down into class kind of thing. It's been more of like just random occurrences at organizational meetings. Hey, I'm going to go sit next to this member who doesn't really have anyone to sit with, and just start a little conversation thing, or just at lunch, or different situations like that. But I guess going back to what we were saying, like it was more of like a desire to live this out. But it also took going in terms of more pressure versus less pressure kind of thing. I feel a lot less pressure. I don't really feel like I have to force myself to go way out of my way to impress the people around me for being such a good Christian. I know the Lord gave us our own personal talents and our qualities of life, abilities and things like that I don't have to force those out of me, that the Lord will bring me opportunities, to share my faith, testimony, scripture, different things like that, or lessons. And so I haven't really felt too much pressure at all. And I think that's how it should be. I think if we feel pressured to do that all the time, in a wrong sense, obviously, then I think the desire kind of goes away, kind of thing.
And I think, you're hitting on just kind of like the obligation versus kind of like the desire, and that, like, that's been a big thing for me as well. And I think, being an English major now, like it's a little bit easier and a little bit more natural to kind of slide my faith into conversation, because a lot of my classes are discussion based. If you read a book that's got like a religious theme in it, which is like always, or at least like, I read everything with this little religious lens. So like it just comes up a little bit more naturally. But it's definitely, and I'm forgetting like what the original thought of the sentence was. Just like you don't want to have this pressure on you to perform academically. You don't want to have this pressure on you to perform like your faith, because like that's just, again, like working to please the men and the people around you as opposed to pleasing the Lord. Because like while the Lord has these great expectations for us, we know with like the utmost certainty that like no matter how imperfectly like we go through day-to-day life, it's like Christ has already sealed the deal for us, so like I'm definitely not gonna freaking have a 20-30 minute Jesus conversation with a stranger every morning, even though that would be like an amazing thing to happen. But like when we kind of like put this pressure on performing our faith, it becomes this agenda, and that agenda mindset for me has been super like toxic whenever I've like given into it, because it's like now I have this quota in my mind. It's like if I don't talk to this person, then like it reflects negatively on me, or for whatever reason. And it's like that's not what the gospel is about. It's not an obligation, and if you're thinking about it as a burden, you've got the wrong mindset. It should just be an overflow of joy, and it's not like we're expected to be like super happy all the time. The world's still pretty broken and busted, but like if your conversations about Jesus are coming out of an obligation rather than like a desire, as you were saying, then it's like, where's your heart, bro? And that'll show in that conversation, because if you just kind of like, I'm a Christian, and it's okay, I guess. Like I go to church on Sunday occasionally. I like breakaway. But like if it's so much different than like your face lighting up when you talk to people, in the same way that like this whole conversation, as we've talked about, I mean, your passion and service and BIMS and being a doctor, it's like your face lights up, and you like at the very beginning you're like, I love talking about this. It's like I can see that in your face, and it's like, as you talk about Christ, I see that same thing. From I'll share a little fun fact with everybody. You were my counselor in Impact. You weren't my dad, which I'm kind of jealous about. I love Scott, but like amazing. And just like I remember you specifically, just like your backwards hat and just like your
still got it.
Your backwards hat, your big baller, and just like all these like just like sport. You were just like such a bro, and like I'd never seen like a Christian who was so faithful, but also just like so relaxed and so chill and so at peace. Like very engaging with all of the freshmen, and just like so open and so vulnerable, like with your testimony and how you shared the gospel and like laid that out for us. Because I was like, this is awesome. Like these guys like you and everybody else in Delta Rupin, shameless plug, like just killed it, you know. And that's not a performance, you know. There's like a little bit, I mean, having been like a counselor and a co-chair myself, it's like you kind of get into like the mob mentality of camp where it's like everyone's going a little bit extra today. But like, I mean, even afterwards, like in follow-up, like that same spirit is inside of you. The fact that you pursue the freshmen throughout all of fall semester, that you host Catan nights at your house on Friday night when we go to the soccer games, bro, versus Georgia. Oh, shoot. We like, I mean, sort of hit on the goalie, but...
what was her name?
Patrice?
Man, I wish I remember. I'll have to look it up
Carrick
later.
Ray
Carrick would remember.
Have to explain it. We gave the goalie for Georgia's women's soccer team a box of Skittles, and she friended us on Facebook.
Exactly. So we did good.
we might be cool. We might not be cool. It was so innocent though. You know, it wasn't anything weird.
Louise was her name.
Louise. Oh, shout out to Louise wherever you are. But it was like even that. You know, it was like. It was interesting because, like, she even told us, like, she messaged us through Facebook or whatever it was. She's like, hey, most people who stand behind the goal are, like, you know, complete jerks and everything. But you guys, like, we cheered her on the entire game.
Good times.
Kind of obnoxiously, but she was like, yeah, y'all were cool. I'm like, yes!
Good times.
No, do you remember that time where we, I think you and I went to Wendy's and we both got, like, two
I know what you're talking about.
half-pound cheeseburgers. Then
there was a hook deal, I think.
It was like a hooked deal. We got like 2 half-pound cheeseburgers each, and we just like devoured them, went into a food coma, and watched Transformers.
I remember that.
With Michael Bay, bro. I think it was on like TNT or something, so it was commercials. But it was like the first one, so the best one. And I was like, that's just life,
we're living
bro.
College right.
No, literally living college right. And it was like that experience for me, like how y'all pursued us, the freshmen. I mean, y'all might have been my only friends like that first semester. Like I was still getting plugged in here at the chapel and like with the local church, and that just takes time for these relationships to develop. But like at retreat, you were just like shoved into community and shoved into like love and care and like Christ and the gospel, and like that carried through, you know. And so that was like the bomb.com. And we also made those signs. Right? Did we make them at your house the freshman year?
For the game day?
For game day, yeah.
We went to my house.
The Butch Jones sign?
Yes, that was at my house. I remember that.
Yeah, that was at your house. Dude, that was...
I still have my Catan and Chill sign.
Yes! Catan and Chill.
I'll have to bring it next time.
We'll hashtag it, bro. Dude,
we will.
That's so funny. No, and it was also interesting that we could just like bond so naturally about stuff that like initially wasn't just like, let's talk about Bible. Like we never had like a Bible study, you know. It was always like, hey, let's play Catan. Like, hey, let's go to the soccer game. Hey, let's go to the football game and like watch the Aggies. But it's strange how like in those spaces where there's just so much love and community around you, Christ naturally comes up in the conversation. And that's what I continue to see. I mean, you and I were like gym buddies.
Yep.
For, I mean, my first semester.
I remember it.
No.
When the weight room was on the basketball court.
On the basketball court, bro. I kind of miss it that way. Like
it was like, weird.
It was weird. It was so much smaller, but like my big thing though, it was like there was no mirrors, which I liked. Cause like,
really?
Yeah, because I was just like, let's focus.
That's fair.
Like
fair.
There was only like one deadlift platform, which also meant nobody was deadlifting.
That's true.
Because everyone was like, man, I'm gonna have to wait for it, but I just get there at like 6, whatever it is, and it's like it's all mine now. Yep. Like it's cool. But no, I remember that you big benching.
Man, that's when I used to have the time to work out all the time. Then I lost all my gains the next year or something like that. I don't know.
You got those spiritual gains.
That's true.
Physical
Definitely
training
do those
is of some
muscles.
value, but godliness has value in all things. 1 Timothy something.
You can say that again.
Yeah. No, but I mean, and just like, I don't think I've ever actually talked to you about this after the fact, but I'm sure you'll remember it immediately, especially because we've already talked about scouting and stuff like that. There was one day, and I think we were planning on like meeting at the gym for like leg day or like chest day or something, and my scoutmaster had passed away like the night before, and my buddy texted me literally as I walked into the gym, and I just had to go into the locker room, and I'm like sobbing.
I remember this now.
Yeah, and so like I texted you, and I was like, hey, I'm in the locker room, and then like there's like a little bit of a gap between like when I texted you and when you got there, and so I was like in that gap thinking, okay, am I gonna cry in front of Ben, or am I not gonna cry in front of Ben? Because I don't know how this dude's gonna react. And then we get in there, and you get in there, and I'm just like, you know, and it's genuinely like mourning and stuff. I don't want to like, you know, make light of it, but you spoke into me in that moment, and you just like straight up quoted Psalms 23, and it's like, you know, I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and I will fear no evil, for you are with me. And I guarantee you, like the next probably 2 weeks after that, like that verse was like in my head, and like that verse was legit what I needed to get through those 2 weeks. And like there's like the moment thing, and there was certainly like a way we could like analyze it where it's like, oh, I reached out and you came and this, that, and the other thing. It wasn't like you just popped into the locker room, you know, but like certainly like God was using you like in just like the simplest of ways. And I don't know how like confident you were in yourself in that moment, but just like scripture, like this one verse, and literally like, I think, you know, the way you are in general, you're like, I don't know if this will help her or anything like that, but here's Psalms 23, and that just like literally like saved my skin for like a month after the fact. And I was like, I don't think I ever said thank you for that. But that was just something that like,
you don't have to say thank you. I got your back.
Yeah, bro. It was just cool. And I think that's like, again, what we've been talking about, because like later on, my freshman year, like it was like, I say we're peers, but you've really been a mentor for me, like kind of like a pseudo guy, because we had that Bible study going on in Sabisa, going through like James. I remember that. It was
James.
Like, yeah, and it was like, bro, that was probably like one of my first glimpses at discipleship, and it was pretty casual as well. You know, there wasn't this super big agenda again, but I'm like, man, this is just it. Like, this is life. I got my boy Ben, and like your attitude, your peace with like seemingly everything, because you're just like a chill guy. Like when you're with me, like we all know there's like stuff in the background is like, you know, like it just, life is stressful.
I agree.
But like, I don't know, you in particular just like have a genuine servant heart about you, like that has kind of like been shown in the conversation already. Like we've talked about service and talked about like being a doctor, you know, being, you know, just a lover of Christ and like what that means being a leader. But it's like, it would take meeting you to fully understand like how much service like is just who you are, and it just it flows naturally. But I also know that it is like a discipline thing, where like you have to think, okay, like how can I love and serve this person today? Like what is how can I reflect Christ and stuff like that? And I think for me personally, like having gone through Impact as a counselor and a co-chair, that was where I picked up on it. Like or at least where like awareness was finally brought to it, where it was like super conscious in me. Was that something for you as well? Like going through curriculum, going through like being a counselor, I think 2 times over. Was that something that like kind of further affirmed your heart for like service, Christ, the community, stuff like that?
Well, I think maybe, well, actually, it might have been when I was a freshman. So let's think about when I was your counselor and you were a freshman.
Yeah.
The same thing kind of happened to me when I was a freshman, and my counselors, who were a year ahead of me, were people that I turned to for help. Yeah. And it was amazing how willing and loving they were to me each time I ran into, you know, crisis, dilemma, problems, things like that. I even remember just one time in particular that my old roommate, his name's Garrett, he graduated by now, but he was actually my counselor. And just having him, you know, just a quick text message away, like in high school, I didn't even like have that sort of quick connection to someone my age, you know, being a senior in high school, for example, like, oh, since you're kind of like at the top of the high school, like, you know, maybe it's kind of, it's a little bit different. But, you know, when I was a freshman and seeing all these upperclassmen like reaching out to me, giving me their numbers for things that, you know, I wasn't, you know, sometimes I may have been a little afraid to reach out to them about certain things because I never really did it that much. But seeing the way that they emphasized it and their willingness to want to do that, I started doing it, you know, just more and more, whether it was like, for example, my situation in class, or maybe family things going on, or just, you know, just other random little things. I don't know what it was, but just seeing them serve like in that way to me really, really inspired me to continue pursuing that kind of path of wanting to mentor and wanting to counsel, like not just like, you know, serving like as a physician, like using my talents like on the operating table like that. That's a little bit different than this. This is more of like wanting to genuinely like be there for people, not just for medical procedures, but for like life and for, you know, just college things going on and just being a counseling kind of role. And so once I saw them doing that for me, that really inspired me to want to do more like that. Like, yes, I already had that service-oriented heart, but that was more like in high school, but that was more towards like community service or medicine, not more of like spiritual kind of thing. So that following semester, I applied for a counselor position, and I was really borderline on doing it. And I asked a few of them what their thoughts were, and got some encouragement, some prayer also about it. And it ultimately worked out. And praise that it ultimately worked out, because I'm very thankful that I could pour into you when your scoutmaster passed, or when, you know, just other freshmen in our camp came up to me with completely different things going on, that I could share my experiences with them. And I'm very thankful that I got to do that, not once, but even twice. And even not just limited to that, but, you know, just everywhere in general, you know? And so that's been really, that one experience right there really boosted like my interest in doing it. And so I've enjoyed doing it ever since freshman year.
And that's definitely like just so cool. But I know I know for me personally, it was just like, especially like as a counselor, like I was trying to like duplicate Delta Reuben, which was like at times healthy, because it's like, okay, I have this really cool example of like people who are Christ followers and like, you know, are loving the freshmen and loving them well. So it's like great that you want to imitate them as they're imitating Christ. But also I had this thing where it's like, if I don't do it exactly the way Delta Reuben did it, then it's like I failed or something. Or if like the spirit or the vibe just isn't the same, if there isn't that same hype or energy or like, you know, level of extroversion, if I don't make this many connections with freshmen, like again, that agenda thing comes up, and it was like, bro, but within that, you know, whatever my heart was at the time, service was just like the epitome of like, you know, a key theme, whatever you want to call it. And like the curriculum that Impact kind of like puts its counselors through, like is, you know, beating that horse to death in terms of like, as much as the freshmen look up at us or up to us, it's like our entire job is to serve them. Like our entire job is to be there for them. And like we kind of look cool, or like we might seem cool just because we're older, and like we have this like, you know, experience and wisdom to share with them, which is amazing. But it's like, with that great power, Spider-Man, comes great responsibility. Or whatever you want to call it. And it's like, I think Romans 15 has a part where it's like, it's the obligation of the strong to bear with the failings of the weak. And it's kind of talking about more so like the weak in faith. And it's like, if you are strong in your faith and you got someone who's weak in their faith, and it's your job to encourage them and edify them and build them up. But it's also just like, man, if you are the head honcho, and if you are a doctor, if you are, you know, like the head coach for Texas A&M or like whatever it is, it's like you now have this obligation because of this platform to use that platform for ministry and for good. And like your face has got to be Christ's face, because like that is the face of truth, of love, that is ultimately kind of like lasts so much longer than like any of us, you know. And then like, and it's when we focus on like him that the impact, you know. Tons of play on words. It's literally like the best name for like the retreat, because it's just like anytime you say the word impact now,
you set yourself up.
You set yourself up for the pun, but it's like, yeah, that impact is made, and that mark is left there, and it's so amazing to see. Switching topics a little bit, unless you had something else that you wanted to say on that.
That's I really enjoy talking about it, especially I like how you mentioned the, you know, being in your position, I guess the head honcho or the head doctor. Just seeing my experiences with my mentor, who's the orthopedic surgeon, like that was definitely evident with him. And I'm very thankful I got to see that. And I'm sure his peers around him are grateful that they had him as a surgeon or as a colleague or things like that.
Yeah. that's again just like so good. And so like now switching topics a little bit, because you are a BIMS major.
That's right.
You're teaching a class right now, ethnomedicine?
Ethnomedicine and ethnopharmacology.
Tell us a little bit about that, because it's like a 1-hour class.
It is a 1-hour class. We meet once a week. If you don't know what ethnomedicine or ethnopharmacology is, well, just like break it down into ethno and then medicine. So ethno means culture, kind of thing. So basically my whole class is geared towards studying traditional medicines from different cultures from all across the world, or different, medicinal drugs or herbs or things like that from all across the world. And so the way I've kind of divided up my class is by like regions of the globe.
Okay.
So I'm in like this block of my class where I'm talking about traditional medicines in Asia and Oceania or Australia kind of thing. And
nice.
I actually got done with my lectures about Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, which is in India, or Aborigine medicine, which is Australia kind of thing. So after, what the really neat thing about this class is not only am I lecturing about the cultures and like their medicinal beliefs and practices, or even not just the medicines that they use or the medicinal herbs that they use.
Right.
But what's really cool about our class is that we're taking what we learned in lecture
and applying it
to where we're making our own little quote unquote medicinal
lab running in there somewhere.
Well, I did have my lecture last week actually did cover hemp, but unfortunately was not able to acquire any in sufficient quantity for what I wanted to do.
Didn't get approved.
And I didn't have the funds for it either. But anyway, but we get to make our own like our own medicinal like concoctions kind of thing. Ooh. Like medicinal like teas or like bath salts, soaps, candles, things like that. And what we're actually making this upcoming Monday are ginger balls. And what I'm tying into that is that ginger was really prevalent in like Asia at the time, very native over there. And what people believe that it would do in like the Chinese medicine or the Ayurvedic medicine, they believe that ginger was good for like digestive aids or things like that in general. So what the intention is that after like what we're doing in our class and on Monday is we're going to take some ginger and some other ingredients like honey or other stuff like that, and we're going to make our own little ginger balls and just take it home. And you know,
it sounds like a snack.
It's really interesting how, I don't know, it's been crazy all the things that I've learned from teaching the class, like you know, even though I'm in the instructor role kind of thing, that he's teaching the class, he should probably be an expert on it already. Well, really, like, I'm literally teaching all this stuff myself the week before I present it. So but at the same time though, it's been a lot of interesting things that I've learned about. I've really enjoyed researching it, presenting it kind of thing. I think my class likes it a lot too, because it's something very unique. Not many people have actually even considered thinking about at all. So it's all a really great learning experience for all of us. And I'm really thankful that I even got the chance to teach this class even.
Dude, it's so cool. And I imagine that there's some kind of, maybe not resistance to it, but just like kind of this assumption coming into it where, as much as you're talking about different cultures and different medicines that are a part of culture, the presumption is that American medicine is the best medicine. And like there's probably a lot of statistics to back that up in terms of like, we got the pills, we got the drugs, we got prescriptions and stuff like that. But it's like also like we have developed a lot of problems like in our culture and society today, because like the medications are so good and some people don't want to go off the medications. And it's like, knowing when to go on, when to go off. And like, I think a lot of people have kind of turned this into a moral issue. And I think, it can be in terms of like, with mental health, especially where it's like, man, are these antidepressants good for you? Like, I mean, and not just like physically good for you, but is it something that like is okayed by the Lord, allowed? Like, can you be like a Christian and like do X and Y or Z like this, and not just like, illicit drugs, because like, submit to governing authorities, like cocaine's probably off the table, but like, in terms of like medical marijuana and like trying to bring all these like maybe recreational drugs into like, pharmaceuticals and pharmacology and stuff like that. Do you have any particular take or insight in like in that area, just like for one, comparing the cultures, the Western versus non-Western medicine, but also just like, man, like where does Christ come into play here?
That's a very good question, because I don't know, just things seem so. It's a really good question indeed. I'm sure it's been thought about a lot recently. It's something that I haven't thought too much about, but I've heard of people bringing it up. I think, I feel like in today's society, we've twisted a lot of the original intentions for certain things. And if we want to use the case for medicinal herbs, like, you know, hemp has all these like antioxidant properties, and it can be used like in terms of medical marijuana, for example, like stimulate appetite or reduce neuropathic pain, kind of things like that. But, you know, in today's society, we get it for the psychoactive like properties and things like that. And I think maybe that's when we're abusing like ourselves, like since our body is our temple and the Lord designed us in His image, and if we're like abusing that, I think that's when it goes kind of wrong. Like even like overdosing on certain medications, things like that. I think that's where it's wrong. Whereas, you know, what things designed in the Lord's image, what they're originally used for, and what they should be used for. I think it's acceptable in that sort of sense. It's just unfortunate how society is nowadays, where it seems like, you know, in order to feel pleasure or to feel better, I need to be overdosing on this or smoking all the marijuana or things like that. But no, that's a good question, though. That's something definitely to think about. I really don't have too much insight on it, but I think
for sure.
I think also at the same time, maybe in terms of healing, like the Lord's also the one doing the healing as well. Yes, these drugs can do all these chemical like things to your body, but the ultimate source of healing comes from the Lord too, which is something we should remember.
Right. I mean, because Jesus' ministry and like, you know, physical ministry here on earth was like healing out the wazoo, and it was miraculous. And I think we've kind of lost the definition of miraculous somewhere in the past 2,000 years, and we've just become, you know, I hate to say more skeptical, but like the skepticism is a lot more revealed to us now through just like this adamant opposition to not faith healing, because like if a doctor tells you something and gives you like, you know, a prescription and it's like, hey, this is tested and true and safe and it's like legal, then like it's in your best interest to probably take it and do what the doctor says, and you know, not just like try to pray away your cancer. There's miraculous stories, but it's also like it's interesting to me how much we feel like we need the high, especially when it comes to like painkillers, marijuana, whether it's medicinal or not, trying to reach this state of transcendence from reality, like the psychoactive, the psychedelic experiences like you were talking about. I think a lot of that stems from really the knowledge that this life is garbage, that this world is broken, and then also like the kind of base supposition that there's got to be a way out, and there's got to be, you know, an alternative to this really garbage life that we're sitting in right now. The problem is like a lack of direction, I think, in terms of like where is relief found, where is healing found, where is comfort, you know, residing for us? Is it going to be in something the world offers us? Is it going to be in, you know, drugs, whether prescribed or, you know, not prescribed, or is it going to be in family? You know, that's a big thing. Is it going to be in relationships and friendships? Are we going to lean into that? Or are we going to lean into the words of Scripture? Are we going to lean into the words of Christ and trust that, you know, whatever brokenness remains in this world, because, I mean, Satan's doing all kinds of nasty stuff here. It's like that the eternal weight of our biggest, you know, sickness and sin and death has been taken away from us. It was interesting. I was in like my third semester of Greek right now, so I might be nerding out a little bit here.
Go for it. I love nerding out.
Yeah. No, and one of my favorite verses in the New Testament, one that's just like hit me personally, is Romans 5:6, where it says, "For while we were still weak, at the right time Christ died for the ungodly." And it's kind of a variation of like 5:8, which most people can kind of point to and be like, while we were still sinners, you know, Christ died for us. And so like the big thing for me, at least personally, was like I knew I was a sinner, but I was kind of okay with being a sinner. But what I wasn't okay with was being weak, like we were talking about earlier, feeling like I had to do all this stuff, the academics, the relationships on my own. So it was like when that verse kind of like was first spoken into me, I was like, oh gosh, like my weakness is Christ's strength. you know, and he's made perfect in my weakness and all that good stuff. So I looked into the Greek of that verse, and the word that gets translated for weak in there is asthenes, and it's also translated 3 or 4 different ways depending on the translation that you use, which is interesting because there are words that aren't super hard to translate, like, you know, he, she,
Sure.
you know, the really basic words and verbs. But there are some words that, like, not that it changes doctrine, like, you know, super big or anything like that, but the nuance of the meaning. This is a roundabout way of saying, like, asthenes means weak, at least in ESV. That's what you'll see when you read it there. But it also means powerless, helpless, and sick. And when I looked at that and I heard sick as well, you know, it's not only are we, like, sick in our sin, but, like, that sickness, like, gives birth to death, you know? And so, like, really recognizing I not only need strength, but I also need healing, because there is this disease called sin that's dwelling inside of me legit every day of my life that Christ has just got to come in and go, like, it's gone.
For sure.
You know, and I think going back to medicine and going back to, like, I mean, there's tons of good stuff, again, that comes from it when it's done properly, when it's not perverted, as you said. Man, there's just this acknowledgement of the sickness, you know, but where we kind of disagree, at least between, like, us and, like, you know, a certain portion of society whom Jesus still loves, is just where that cure is and who that cure is, because it's a person, it's not a thing, it's not abstract, and it's super concrete. It's Christ and his work and his death and his resurrection, and it's like, that's where that hope legit is. And I think that's something that you know really, really well, and I'm curious how that kind of plays into your role as a medical student and as a, you know, a future doctor and stuff like that. Have you, I guess this is a pretty blunt question, have you seen Christ's miraculous healing personally? Like, or what has that looked like for you in terms of, like, seeing the physical healing that's done, or, like, maybe, like, through the hands of doctors, but how is Christ also, you know, doing this ministry as well?
I guess in terms of, so you're asking if I've seen, like, Christ not only heal physically, but emotionally, spiritually, with patients, with you, with relationships, and just, like, witnessing Christ's healing, and maybe in situations where someone has been seeking alternative medicines, for lack of a better word, like, how does Christ compare with what the world is offering us right now? Well, I'm trying to think. Off the top of my head, I can't recall a personal experience where I've kind of done that, but I will say that what actually sticks out to me is just having that presence of, you know, just being there for somebody, whether it's, like, my girlfriend or a family member, or, you know, you, for example, that time your freshman year, or just any other college student. I think having that presence can really, like, the presence of somebody who you trust and who you know who loves you spiritually and wants to help you. I think that just being there has been the most, like, obvious way that I've witnessed it personally, and the most common thing that I can do is just be there and providing genuine advice. And it may not be right at that moment, like, yes, like giving, you know, a big hug, or just kind of, you know, sitting together for, let's say, 15 to 20 minutes, like, coming out of a conversation or that hug, like, you know, you could probably see a little bit change of emotion kind of thing. But then at the same time, though, that, you know, days or even weeks later, people coming back and saying, you know, what you said to me really stuck out to me, and I want to keep pursuing that that sort of thing that you said, or I want to make sure I live my life like the way you told me how you're living your life through Jesus, kind of thing. And I think that's the way I've been doing it personally. The effects may not be immediate, obviously, but long term, I can see how people have progressed from my presence of just being a godly person there for them.
For sure.
And I mean, I've heard, like, other stories of, you know, Christ's miraculous healing on the operating table, or just from other people speaking word speaking genuine truth into non-believers, and those non-believers ultimately becoming believers in Christ, kind of thing. Of course, everybody does it a little bit differently. Like the physicians may do it their way, or my friends may do it their way. But I feel like the best way that I've been doing it is my presence and pouring advice in that sort of sense as well. And I can definitely see not just like a morale boost, but a faith. Like a little shaken faith, a little bit for the good, obviously.
Exactly. No, and I think the key word there that you kind of kept coming back to, and that I want to come back to, is presence. Because when we think about the miraculous, and we talked a little bit about how that's just kind of gotten lost, and we don't really know what to expect from a miracle, whether it's like this really big outward sign, or whether it's just this kind of inward sign as well. The miraculous part about Christ, there is the death and the resurrection, and that like sealed the deal for us. But I think arguably just as amazing is the fact that his presence and his power is legit inside of us, and it's inside of you. And so when you say that presence, I'm thinking, okay, this is Ben's presence, but it's also the Spirit's presence, because he is dwelling in you constantly. And I think that is, the mechanism with which like this healing that you see both in yourself and the people around you as they're blessed by you and your words and your actions. It's like it's God always working through you, and I'm sure you're aware of that. Maybe just didn't have like the words for it, but it's like that comes to me as just like so radically different from like, again, our conception of a miracle, because it's like we feel like there has to be this outward sign and this huge action that has to take place, like just, water to wine, come back from the dead, or like this leper and the skin peels off. And that's still happening. I've heard amazing stories about that. But just as miraculous is the fact that there is a God who is so powerful and so loving that he wants to step into this broken world and be present, like with every single one of us who just like, proclaims the name of Jesus, which is unthinkable. No, like that in of itself is miraculous. And like it's strange, maybe I never get tired of it, but I get used to it, because like I'm surrounded thankfully by you, by all these people who love me and care about me and pour into me. And I think I definitely take that for granted, where it's just like I'm wanting something more when Christ is already here. And it's because I'm missing the fact that like legit Christ is right here, and his Spirit is just like so real and so powerful and so capable of healing physically, emotionally, spiritually, like to the hell and back, literally, for us. And so like that's a good word. Thank you for sharing that. And you hit on this, and I wasn't gonna like poke the bear and poke you into it, but but you said you had a girlfriend.
Oh yes,
who we both know now, and we recently discovered that we both know, and her name is
Lauren,
and she's a heck of a gal. I get to work with her as a youth group volunteer over at Holy Cross. How did you two meet each other?
Long story short, we met in class, and outside of class, we would, as a lab group, kind of spend time studying material together, and for the most part, outside of like the studying content, we just had random conversations just about whatever, and our conversations seemed to click pretty well. And then from there, I mean, we went out to dinner a few times, and it seemed to work pretty well, so we just kept it going.
Bro, that's good bull, bro. And she, I mean, has a strong faith. Was that something that kind of like came up pretty quickly for y'all? Like I'm not to pick like too far into conversations here, like it's personal, but like the little cycle or just like the mold for Christian dating is so ambiguous to me, and there's so many different ways to do it, but it also seems like there's like general trends, things we're like encouraged to do, like be intentional and like show her that you care and stuff like that. Like what has this experience in this relationship been like for you? Has it been like, for one, like fulfilling, and I'm sure it has, but also just like, has it been what you expected it to be when you, I'm sure, heard all this, kind of rhetoric from the Christian bubble about this is Christian dating, and, that versus this, how does it kind of compare?
Well, definitely being in dating relationships do grow people as individuals a lot, and I've definitely felt it in myself, both spiritually and like in this world with my relationship that I have with her right now. And it is like a lot of work to to live a godly life and to live it in like the relationship in a godly way. And especially with today's standards of quote unquote dating, which it's evident everywhere. And obviously that's not how the certain things that we see in movies or TV shows or whatever, it's not how it's supposed to be done kind of thing. Not what originally God had intended. So having to kind of fight back those temptations and staying on like a genuine path kind of thing is a lot of work. And, just being knowledgeable, and as a guy, just looking for good ways to continue leading it in the best way I can through like different, like, again, mentors who are ahead of me. Not necessarily the orthopedic surgeon, but maybe my old impact counselors who I've referred to a lot. Or just different sermons that I can listen to on the topic, or different books I can read, or even direct scripture itself, just refer to certain things.
Anything like specific that is coming to your mind when you think, because sermons, scripture, anything specific that you have?
Well, the first sermon I listened to before I started dating her was the Ben Stewart dating sermon. It is a really good one. The reason why I basically did that is because, being in college, my faith had grown exponentially, and how I should be living my life through God had been, I guess, better than it ever has been before. So I was like, before I start diving deep into the relationship, I think I need to build up some more knowledge on this kind of topic. And so that's why I listened to that sermon, for example. And then just friends who have been in relationships longer than me, like whenever I feel personal struggles or different things like that, I feel comfortable reaching out to them, seeing how they handle it, because I see it working, their relationships working out well. And so it's somebody I know who I can trust to find a good answer from, to resolve personal issues with me or something like that. And it's been very beneficial. Just all the knowledge that I've learned, again, I think it's the reason why it's just been so successful.
And just like having both of y'all so rooted in Christ, not only Christ nominally, but just like through service. I served with her. I've seen her serve with these youth, and she loves it. They love her and stuff like that. Seeing like you serve and stuff like that, it seems like just like y'all are pursuing Christ, and as you pursue Christ, you end up closer together, like in the same class, and just like, fate has it so and whatnot. And you talked a little bit about just generally like how in a dating relationship you are grown as individuals. Could you like elaborate on that a little bit? Like, what have you learned through this relationship about Ben Becker, about yourself and who you are?
I think being in a relationship with another person really can reveal certain things about you that you never really realize, kind of thing. Because you're spending time together. She sees things differently than I do, for example. And having, I guess, quote unquote feedback, or her opinions coming back to me, have really grown me as an individual, with like little things that I don't even think about. And I think just hearing that, like just being together, like she gives me like just hearing her opinion about things that she interprets things I do, really makes me, I guess, like feel like I can approach a relationship more maturely if I think things differently, like the way she's thinking things, if that makes sense. Or thinking things a little bit through more, whereas like, doing something simple that I've been doing kind of routinely, and not thinking anything of it, like just hearing that feedback from her has really shaped me well. And I think for me, like in order to like be a good leader in this like relationship as well, it's important for me to be improving myself as a person. Because like I want the relationship to be successful. Like if you're not dating for a specific purpose or reason, then why are you in it, for example? And so if I want that purpose to be like a good thing, and if I want it to continue lasting, I think I need to, or I know that I should be building this knowledge and applying it, and continue just seeking out more knowledge. And that's something that I've definitely been growing in as well.
For sure. That's definitely, I think, a point where you like just continuing to seek that knowledge, continuing to learn about yourself. It makes you much more aware of just like the little things you do, like the idiosyncrasies of like how you talk, how you speak, like if you hold the door open or not, like you get like those, kind of like nuanced feedbacks, but also just like about your character and your personality, and like you just learn so much empathy and how to like really honor her, how to lead her, but also like how to follow, because I think that's definitely a thing that we like. I always have to be reminded of is like the guy definitely has a role in marriage, particularly like with like leading the spiritual side of the relationship, but we're also following,
I agree completely.
Yeah, and definitely like just like the best leaders are always followers, the best leaders are always learners, usually readers as well, whether that's like reading books, whether that's reading people, listening to sermons, getting poured into through these spiritual mentors and stuff like that, and just having somebody whom you love, so much, and just care about so much, it drives you to become better. And I think that really ought to be reflected, at least personally with me, more in terms of our relationship with Christ, because you have like your girlfriend or your boyfriend who, not that you like change for and just like completely do a 180 around for and head over heels and stuff, but like you make adjustments to your life, and you truly do want to fine tune yourself and carve away the rough edges and purify yourself and sanctify yourself so that this other person does not get hurt by our inadequacy, and they inevitably will, because we're all still broken and we'll never be perfect. But like a big part of that refining process, one, it's like the feedback, between boyfriend and girlfriend, between husband and wife, but also like constantly, as you mentioned, like between us and God, between like us and Christ. And even like more so than that, just like having the same heart for Christ that we have for that significant other, hopefully more so, where it's like Christ is, driving us not out of an obligation, but like as a desire, as you said earlier, to want to be better and to, kind of be more self-aware and analyze the rough edges that need to be shaved off and just like left behind, put off your former self, put on the robes of righteousness, like imitate Christ, bro. And that's like super encouraging to hear from you, because like, I mean, I know both of y'all, like I don't always get to like see two sides of relationships. Like usually like I'll have my like guy friends and like they'll talk about their girlfriends, or like I'll have like my girlfriends and they'll talk about their like boyfriends, and I'm like, rarely do I get to see both of them interact, but I see y'all interact, and it's like adorable in a way. It's just like, I don't know, it's really, really encouraging to see y'all, but also just like, again, how much Christ truly defines your relationship, defines both of you as individuals, and really separates you and like sets you apart from at least like again, like people whom Jesus loved, but who are struggling to find out what dating is for. Is it for me, or is it for marriage? Is it for God, and stuff like that. So that's just wanted to encourage you in that. It's
sweet.
Like,
I appreciate it.
Yeah. In terms of also, I think I wanted to get back a little bit into medicine, particularly. I know you talked about your mentor being an orthopedic surgeon, and you are, in the future, the immediate future, going to tech, right? Tech for the potentially, yeah. Got accepted, right? So, are you explicitly looking to follow in your mentor's footsteps, be an orthopedic surgeon? Is there a specific avenue where you feel like you're being led? Is it ethnomedicine? Is it medicine? Is it pharmacology? Is it what is it for Ben Becker?
Sure. Well, I have the most shadowing experience with orthopedic surgery, and it's the thing I'm most familiar with, in a hospital setting. So if somebody asked me, what do you want to be in the future? And I would say an orthopedic surgeon, because I have the most, experience around it. But at the same time, I don't really want to dictate that, because I want to keep my options, all my options open, because I know that I'll see something in medical school that I've never seen before, and it might completely blow my mind and make me want to pursue that instead. And so the avenue for me right now, I guess you could say, is whatever avenue the Lord has for me. And so I'm going to just, keep it in my prayers, and whatever path that I'm led down, I'm going to pursue it, whether it's orthopedic surgery or internal medicine or I don't know, pediatrics, anything like that. Because practicing medicine is the one thing I want to do, and giving help to those who need some healing aid, no matter what doctor you are in the field of medicine or in the field of healthcare, you're going to be doing that.
For sure.
And I think that's a big motivating factor that anybody should have in this field, especially.
Is there a place that's particularly, like, you know, geographically, like, on your heart? Because now, especially teaching ethnomedicine, you've got this, you know, wealth of knowledge about different cultures, different practices, and, you know, all these different medicines that are kind of like from different places in the world. Is there anywhere, you know, missionally that you could see yourself maybe going into short-term, long-term, and practicing medicine outside the United States, into you know these third world countries that not only need adequate medical care and health care, but also definitely need the gospel and the message of Christ? Yeah,
I actually had the chance. So last summer I went on a medical mission trip, and we went to a third world country. We went to Honduras.
Nice.
And so I'd never been to Central America before, so that was a pretty unique experience. But I really got a lot out of giving healing aid to those who couldn't afford it, and they were just so appreciative of the little help that I could provide as a student volunteer, or me watching the licensed doctors give help to them in general. The appreciation and the gratitude that they had, it was just so heartwarming that, you know, maybe someday I want to go abroad with, you know, maybe Doctors Without Borders or any other organization like that, and, you know, give my time to those who might not be able to, you know, afford adequate health care.
Right.
You know, being at home, like in the United States even, or in Texas, being close to family has its benefits. Has a very big benefit, and they're very dear and close to me, and so I'd hate to stray too far away.
Right.
I'd like to end up back in Texas at some point.
But your heart's just here, and I think that's a big thing as well, because I feel like with doctors especially, because there's so much need for you know, healthcare and medicine across the world, and there's just such like this open window for ministry, but there's also so much need, I mean, still within our borders, still within the United States, for, I mean, people like yourself who love Jesus, who love medicine, who love helping people, and for whom profit is not the prime motivator. You know, there's so much, I don't know, I just like hear these crazy stories about like medical bills and hospital bills and prices that people pay for medications for quote unquote adequate healthcare, or what they're told that they need. And it's like, there's people who do it correctly, and there's some situations that are just really unfortunate and whatnot. But I think people do get taken advantage of because, I mean, there's just a lack of empathy, and there's a lack of care. And as much as, you know, doctors as a profession are, you know, servant-hearted and kind and want healing for people, they also are a business. You know, practices, hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, like, it's business, and there's a profit incentive. And like when that incentive, again, for us and for, you know, our well-being kind of outdoes that incentive to help others, you know, it's unfortunate. It's really, really sad and kind of heartbreaking to watch. I mean, and just to hear those stories of people who can't afford their medication, who have to get switched or are going in debt because they just, you know, they feel like they've been told they need this, or it's rough. But talk to me a little bit more about Honduras. Was there, like, I'm sure there were a couple of Jesus moments there, either just like talking with people, getting to see just a different side of the world, like the culture shock. There's always something to tell from stepping outside of your comfort zone, going to someplace new.
It was definitely a significant culture shock, that's for sure. Just the quality of life and just the level of technology or different things like that were very, very different than what I'd grown up in. In particular, we did a lot of our service in rural Honduras. And what I heard from the people who took us around everywhere is that, you know, those people out there live on less than a few dollars a day kind of thing, and just don't have very much but each other and things like that. And so I think one of the biggest Jesus moments that I encountered personally was, well, I should be, like, one, very, very thankful and blessed and humbled that I'm where I'm at right now. Because, I mean, yes, all of us have selfish desires to a certain extent and whatnot, but sometimes, you know, I can get carried away with my own problems or think my problems are the worst in the world.
We've got a CVS like a block away, bro.
Honestly. Those people would have to go couple miles, like 20 miles,
On
30
foot.
miles maybe, probably, exactly. Or if foot or bike, either way, it would take forever. And it like made me realize that, you know, sometimes I really do have a selfish heart and selfish desires, and you know, that's not good to have, and that the Lord can, you know, help me. Like, yes, I've been trying to fight them, and I do sometimes, like, oh, you know, I'll give and it'll make me feel better, kind of thing.
Right.
But definitely more satisfaction comes from the Lord when you put those selfish desires and problems, if you give those to Him. And so I think that's one of the biggest things that He revealed to me, is that your selfless service through me can help.
What were the Honduran? I think that's right, Honduran. Like the Honduran people, because I know generally, like in my personal experience, like people outside the United States, like especially like on like mission and stuff like that, like they're fascinated with, you know, these visitors, you know, and it's not so antagonistic as like maybe when people from those places come here. You know, it's usually very welcoming, very open, like probably anxious because they're like, who are these guys? Like they, you know, they're big and they're scary, but like what was the kind of the response to y'all just being in that place and really having the gospel with you? What was kind of
well, actually they were very, at least most of the places we went were very deep rooted with Catholic churches. I think that's what it is around there. And so
Central American, that makes sense.
So most of the communities, I did see a little maybe hesitancy, maybe a little bit from them, but they were more welcoming more welcoming and grateful, like very grateful people, because they knew that we were there to help them. And at least most of the places that we went, they always thanked us, and they always thanked the Lord too. So they were very they had their deep roots in their faith as well, at least from the little time that they would talk to us or things like that. And that was very inspiring and very nice to hear from them as well. But they were very welcoming, and, you know, there was definitely a language barrier, and I'm not very proficient in Spanish, so I couldn't quite.
So it is Spanish.
They do speak Spanish down there, yes, unless it's a variant of Spanish of some sort. I'm not sure.
There's always dialects and stuff.
But since I'm not quite a fluent speaker, I couldn't like share the gospel, but rather I'd be more of a witness of it, and through my actions, I think
definitely,
you know, just having just a kind and loving heart to go there and serve, whether it was in the clinic or just hanging out with the little kids, being, you know, like someone to look up to hang out and talk to with. I think that really had a significant influence and impact on them.
Bro, that's always awesome. Yeah, language barrier is like super big, but it's amazing how, like, despite, I mean, whatever barriers that exist, that you could still have that, I mean, even a smile, you know, just like this common thread of like humanity, you know, and especially just kind of getting to see, I'm sure like between the signs and just like the organization and like the promotional materials, whatever's like on site, you know, they can tell that y'all love Jesus, and you can tell by their action, like, that they love Jesus. And so while there may be a hard time like reciprocating that, at least like through language and through talking to one another, kind of hard to share stories that way, but just sharing that love, and love through service and love through action, and just like it keeps coming back to that in terms of like, I mean, that's exactly what Christ did. He kind of had like the lingua franca of like Aramaic or whatever he did, but like, I mean, I think about the apostles at Pentecost, where it was like, oh, they get filled with all these languages, but even, I mean, after that, even now, where there's just so much difficulty like trying to cross these language barriers, going into like, you know, unreached people groups and stuff like that, it's like surprising how simple the gospel can be, just through action and through love. And I think that's a really good physical example of that, because we I think out of like a good intent make the gospel more complicated here as we get more proficient in our own language, and we want to express like the deepest depths and like the biggest heights of who God is. It's like we try to explain him, and then the words just end up falling short. You know, so even when it's like you got the language, like you could never do God any justice when we talk about him. We try our best, and that's like why we're here. I mean, that's exactly why we're here. But it's like, man, it's amazing what still like action can do, and just like like love. But that's awesome. That's amazing. Anything else you wanted to talk about, bro? I think I'm drying up on questions, on conversational topics.
I've been enjoying what we've been talking about so far. I've enjoyed every minute of it.
I love it. Yeah. Anything you were thinking about that we hit on a little bit that you wanted to talk about more?
I did really want to share my personal story of how I became interested in medicine and how the Lord, that's kind of what I did talk about actually. At the very beginning, and how the Lord, played a significant, role in putting, I guess maybe I didn't emphasize this enough, but I did want to emphasize that, looking back on my whole journey in college, on this up and down roller coaster path, the more I look back on it, the more I realize how the Lord had lined up the people and the events and the acceptance to A&M and the people that were placed in my life, just things like that, how the Lord orchestrated all of that together to put me in the position of where I'm at today. And, I think it's just truly amazing that, it's that He's in complete control of the things that are working out. And, where I'm at right now, I'm completely content. Like, yes, there are those times where I'm like, at
always
lows, very questionable times. But looking back on it now, that I see that the Lord used those events and these people, and I just wanted to share that everybody has one of those. And if they feel like that they're in a moment where they're just kind of questioning, what to do with the rest of their life kind of thing, where, just something like that there's always, the answer has already been laid out for us. We just have to have faith in that answer and just,
It's Jesus, by the way.
Exactly. And so I thought that was pretty neat to see the Lord working through my life. And I just want to, going forward, just to have that mentality and something that I'll continue to be growing on.
Bro, well, it's been amazing to have you here, bro.
It's been amazing to be here.
Dude, thank you. It's been, amazing talking to you, getting to know you. I mean, these past, 2.5 years now, it's, literally so amazing. It's been, huge impact on my life. Just thankful you're here, bro. Would you mind praying this episode out for us?
Oh, I'd love to pray us out.
Heck yeah.
Dear Lord, I just thank you for bringing me here today to speak about you, to speak your words. Dear God, thank you for bringing Cody and I together, just for the friendship that we've had and the moments that we've had together. God, I pray for everyone listening on this podcast that no matter what situation they're in right now, or, whatever circumstances are going on, that God, that your life, that their life, that anybody's life has already been laid out. And I just encourage everyone to reach out to you and to find that spiritual comfort that, that whatever is laid out in front of them or laid out in front of anybody, God, that it's going to work for their best interest, that they can find you, they can seek peace and comfort in you. Yeah. God, I pray for everyone to reach out to, people, to reach out to mentors or close brothers and sisters in Christ, that together that we can tackle these things together. And God, I just pray for, the rest of this semester, the rest of this work week, and just to have, just a positive outlook on just things going on right now in everyone's lives. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, everybody. See you later.